I think there we go. Excellent. A very good afternoon to you all on this Friday afternoon, this sunny Friday afternoon where I am. And hopefully, after this session, you might get to enjoy some of the rays. So, as Melissa said, myself and Golche, and I'll get her to introduce herself in a little while, were commissioned by Melissa, who is doing this project with UKOI to produce a toolkit to equip supervisors with practical strategies and a deeper understanding of the challenges faced by postgraduate research students, particularly those who are international and those who identify as Black and minority ethnic, thinking about how do we foster a more inclusive and supportive academic environment. So this workshop lasts until 3 o'clock, and what we will do is take you through the key concepts that the toolkit will have, and we will work to bring some of those concepts to life through interactive activities. So you'll be pleased to hear we won't be talking at you for the whole time. And as Melissa said, after the workshop, that toolkit will be sent out. So just in terms of myself, my name is Sanchia Alasia. I have worked for over 15 years in the HR and equality, diversity and inclusion field. So I'm currently working at Transport for London as Head of Diversity and Inclusion. And I also have a small consultancy that supports organisations to become more inclusive in their practice. Myself and Melissa also deliver a program called Diversifying Leadership with an organisation called Advanced HE, which is about supporting Black and minority ethnic academics to succeed in their leadership journeys. But I do have a strong background in education. I've worked in HR and diversity functions at Queen Mary University of London, Brunel University and London South Bank University. So well versed with equality, diversity and inclusion in the workforce space, but also very closely working with our academics to make sure that their practice is inclusive within their departments and within their student interactions. Okay, I will now hand over to Golche to introduce herself.
Yes, I've managed to unmute myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Gülce. I'm an EDI professional, but also I've worked in academia for about 10 years, from 2010 till 2020, including my PhD research in senior management careers in the civil service and looking at privilege from a privileged perspective. So after that, I started working in the sector after following 10 years of consultancy again, but also I've worked in the university sector as EDI officer and senior EDI manager. I'm working at LSE right now, and I'm really happy to join my colleagues today to talk about some of the issues that PhD students are facing, but also discuss with PhD supervisors what could be helpful around these issues, and discuss and learn from each other, basically, but also hoping that could be a very interactive session so we can discuss all of these matters together.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to ask Megan to start sharing the presentation that we have for you. And just to add that myself and Golche worked together at Brunel University. So we kind of got that experience of working on diversity and inclusion projects as well. So we were really pleased to be part of this project and get the opportunity to work with each other again. Okay, if I ask you to go to the next slide. So in terms of the objectives of this workshop, so understanding challenges faced by our postgraduate students. So Golche will talk a little bit about that. I will reflect on deficit versus strengths-based mindsets, which is one of the key concepts that we will bring out in the toolkit. Golche will explore inclusive, culturally aware supervisory strategies and practice active listening techniques. And then I will kind of round up the session thinking about what have we learned, also maybe identifying any key themes and committing to that one change in practice. So thank you. So if I could ask Megan to stop sharing her screen, because I'm going to share a poll with you. So let me get that ready. So I will share the link in the chat and then I can bring it up. 1 second. Okay, excellent. And then let me share my screen so everybody can see the poll. Here we go. And let me present that. So just to begin the session, and there's no right or wrong answer for this, we just wanted to think of one word that describes your hope for postgraduate research student success. So just before we begin and get into sharing, you know, some of the concepts with you, what would one word be that describes your hope for PGR student success? So you can click the link in the chat. You can also join by typing in pollev.com/Sanchia Alasia 170. You can join by text message by sending Sanchia Alasia 170 to that number, or in the right hand corner you can see a QR code. You can use your device to scan the QR code. So hopefully through one of those methods, and it is working because I can see a word coming up, you should be able to join. So you can put in more than one word, but just one word at a time would be appreciated. So one word that describes your hope, for postgraduate student success. So we'll give it a minute. And what happens is if more than one of you say the same word, it magnifies the word. So for example, we can see empowered coming up quite big. So that means that more than one of you have put that in as well. So we can see empowered, which a few of you have put in. We can be supportive. So being a supportive supervisor, non-imposter syndrome, and we know imposter syndrome is kind of a concept where we think we are not able and we think we are not capable when we really are, but that can really inhibit how we conduct ourselves, and in this context how our postgraduate students conduct themselves. Being skilled, so that could be you having the skills to support, it could be making sure the students have the skills that they need to succeed. Enjoyable, which is a really interesting word because it should be fun, right? It should be fun. Fulfillment, we've got wiser, we've got agency, resilience, having that resilience, because it's not going to be kind of perfection when you're supervising them. And so you've got to have that resilience, confidence as well. So do you have the confidence as supervisors? Do your students have the confidence? And we'll explore some of these concepts as we go through the session. Feels, belonging, and again that's coming up a bit bigger because more than one of you have put belonging in. So belonging and ensuring that your students feel included and supported. Melissa, did you have a query?
Yeah, I can't see. It might just be my screen, but
sorry.
I can't see the responses popping up. I'm hearing you talk it through, but I'm only seeing that no one has responded
as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing nods. Yes.
Oh, apologies for that.
Maybe you need to share it so we can see the words.
I was sharing it. Let me try sharing it again. 1 second. And hopefully you might see those words. Can you see those now?
Loading. Yes, thank you.
Okay, apologies for that. I thought you could see and I was going on. Okay, sometimes there are these technical glitches. Okay, so we've got empowered coming up quite big. So a number of you have said that. Belonging is coming up quite big. So a number of you have said that. So ensuring that you are empowered, your students are empowered, that sense of belonging, that sense of inclusion, where we know that you as staff and our students can really thrive. We've got professionally, achievement, skills, confidence, rewarding. It should be a rewarding job. That fulfillment, that non-imposter syndrome, as I said before, complaints. Yeah. So what is there any theme, I guess, to the student complaints would be a question to ask that needs to be investigated. Is it a systemic change that needs to be thought about there? We've got employability. Yeah. So making sure that our students are not just succeeding in the academic environment, but actually when they go out there, are they going to be able to succeed when they go into the working world? Absolutely, that's quite important. Developmental, being supported, thriving. Yeah, so not just surviving, but thriving. Growth, having that resilience, wiser, energetic. I think I've got most of them there. And what I can do is I can send this over. So that can be shared with you after the session as well. So you can just take a look at that and reflect on that. Would anybody like to say, whether in the chat or verbally, why you said the word that you said? So just giving that opportunity. Why did you say the word that you say? So you can type that in the chat or just say verbally. Why did you say empowered? Why did you say belonging? Why did you say employability? Would anybody like to expand a little bit more?
Well, I'll kick off
yes,
and warm up the room.
Yeah.
I said non-imposter syndrome because
Oh,
it would be great. Yeah, it would be great if we can just stop an entire generation of having to carry forward knowing what imposter syndrome is. It would be really nice if we can put an end to that. So that's why I put it forward as a hopeful thing.
Thank you. And Lara, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I thought about empowered because I thought it encapsulates nicely everything I want this PhD student to have, to feel, and to reflect. If this student feels empowered, I will be very happy.
Yeah.
And it means it includes not just skills and knowledge, but also the emotional intelligence behind it. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, so thinking about your role as supervisors and how do you support that empowerment? As you say, that can happen in a number of different ways and a number of different concepts. Do they themselves feel empowered? Do they have that confidence? That's really important. Thank you. We've got some things coming in the chat as well. So Constant has said empowered again, following on from what Lara has said. Empowered captures the importance of growth, acquiring new skills, but also the subjectivity of improved self-confidence. So yeah, confidence is quite closely linked to empowerment and making sure, do our students have the skills that they need? Are they able to grow? Does the environment that they're in provide that sense of belonging and inclusion to allow them to do those things as well? We've got Vilija. I said belonging because I think that it's important for PGR students to feel part of, learn from and engage with an academic community. Absolutely. And we know that if they do feel part of it, if they feel that they can be themselves, then that chance for engagement is definitely gonna increase. Sai says, again, on that belonging theme, a sense of belonging is integral to students' experiences to be recognised and valued. So we can have diversity. We can work in universities that have diverse students, have diverse staff, but if they don't feel that sense of belonging, they're not going to be the best that they can be. They're not going to feel heard. They're not going to be able to feel that they can use their voice, and that's quite important. Michael said rewarding and fulfilling, as PGR work is so often a struggle. Yeah. And I think at the end of that struggle, you have to feel like there is a point to this. There is a reward and there is something that I'm not only doing for myself in terms of growth, but in terms of the subject that I put and poured all of that research into is actually going to have a betterment in the wider society. So thank you. Getting some really good comments there. and constant employability, because a PhD is also a major professional qualification, and it's part of the supervisor's role to flag to their student what skills they are acquiring and how these might be applied. Yeah, very important. So all of these skills that they're gaining through their study, which takes a number of years, how might that translate into the working world? What transferable skills will there be? Because, you know, we might have a particular skill set, so we might feel we can only go into a particular field, but a lot of skills are actually transferable and can go into many fields. So how do we make sure that our students are aware of that too? Okay. Excellent. So thank you for those contributions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Megan to start sharing the presentation again, and Golce will talk about the supervisor's role in a complex PGR landscape.
Thanks, Sanjia. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes, we can see that.
Yes, perfect. So as you can see, this diagram below, it places sort of, when you look at it, it places the student at the center, not in isolation, but sort of embedded in several intersecting systems. And those systems I sort of use in every research or sort of work I do around equality and diversity, because they're surrounded in academic, institutional, personal, and societal sort of macroeconomic systems. And I'd like to reflect on the multi-layered nature of this system, the reality of it, and that postgraduate students come into. So our role, your role as a supervisor, isn't just about guiding research. You're also a bridge between the student and the wider system of support, or sometimes we can call them barriers. Many challenges that our students facing, whether it's cultural adjustment, imposter syndrome, or institutional bias, do not sit on their own in one sole box. So being aware of these overlapping influences or barriers or challenges allow us to respond with some empathy to students, and also we can have a more targeted support. And we will talk about these support mechanisms, like what we can use in the next slides. So it would be helpful to focus on some of these. And because Melissa mentioned, highlighted the imposter syndrome, I want to start from that, and we'll go through the other ones later on. It is the persistent feeling that students might feel that you're not as competent as or capable as others think that you are. So as soon as you enter to this world, you may think that you don't fit, and at any moment you'll be exposed as a fraud, or even when there's clear evidence of your success, you can keep doubting yourself. And there could be various reasons to it. So the reasons they face this could be attributed to their success to luck, timing, or other external factors, feeling like they don't belong or aren't good enough for that area, especially in academic or professional setting that they enter, and also fear of being found out or not living up to expectations. And supervisors, of course, clarify things in the beginning, but it's always like finding out as you go through these 3-4 years. So it's very common among all postgraduate students, and I could recall, not from my own experience, but also from all my colleagues, my friends in the PhD, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, who may face added barriers such as structural racism as they start going through the research field, but also as they start maybe teaching alongside this, unconscious bias, lack of representation, isolation from peer networks. So in a supervisory context, recognizing imposter syndrome is important because it can affect the student's confidence, productivity, and well-being. And supervisors can help by sort of normalizing these feelings and sort of reminding or affirming the student's capabilities and providing supportive feedback. I know it's not easy to continuously do that for a student, especially when you're busy, supporting with the research side. It's difficult to also provide this psychological support. If we go into these each in a diagram, many international students or first generation scholars are navigating what often feels like a hidden curriculum, like they're trying to find behind what is expected there, just to know the norms of academic argument, critique, or referencing. Even referencing can be a myth in the beginning for a student. And also other implicit norms of UK academic culture for international students, things like hierarchy, formality, or what counts as initiative may not be obvious. So some students hesitate to ask questions or challenge ideas, not because they lack confidence, although I don't like to use the word confidence because it does reflect a certain culture, but because they come from systems that value difference to authority, it may reflect something different to them. So language and communication barriers could be another issue. Even students with excellent English may struggle to express complex ideas, especially in supervision meetings, where expectations may be high and unspoken. And also networks, limited access to networks could be, informal networks could be an issue. Many marginalized students lack peer networks, which can be critical for navigating academia later on, not just on their research years for 3-4 years, but also for their, writing their academic articles, publishing them, and so on. They may also miss out on informal opportunities for teaching or having collaboration on certain research fields, casual advice, getting some insider tips that other students access more easily. And the other important issue could be homesickness or social isolation. Loneliness affects not just well-being of student, but also productivity and confidence again. The supervisory relationship may be one of the few points of consistent human connection as they continue to speak to their supervisor. And also structural racism and unconscious bias is one of the most important parts of this, which can manifest in feedback, in assumptions about competence or who is naturally academic. You might have heard these things around, in different settings. Being aware of this helps us sort of avoid reinforcing harm on the students. So if we can move on to the other slide, please. I want to ask a few questions. So based on these, as you can feel how much impact you can have as a supervisor, and you can kind of reframe those self-perceptions and you can challenge systemic patterns by supporting the inclusion. So based on these, how can we ensure that our supervision approach doesn't unintentionally reinforce these barriers? I'd like to ask you. And instead of, doing this, instead becomes a space where students feel seen, respected, and supported to succeed on their own terms. I'm reflecting on being authentical as who they are, and with their research, how can they be seen, respected, and supported during their research career? Who would like to speak up? You can just jump in, give an example. You don't have to necessarily answer this question, but you can give an example of any student sharing this experience before. Yes, please, Lara. Oh, sorry, Patricia.
Thank you. Perhaps it's more a comment. I'm thinking what a huge responsibility we have as supervisors. We are expected to be this mothering, parental, all-powerful figure, capable of understanding all the different backgrounds that students bring with them, and to be able to respond to sometimes things they don't know themselves, what they're lacking, or the doubts, where their doubts are coming from. And we need to be there and mentor and facilitate and support and make them feel seen. And it's a huge ask from us. And I just wonder, what kind of training do we have? Are we such human beings already that we can provide this for someone else. I mean, we have the knowledge, we have academic skills, but this is like in a different league altogether. Just a comment.
Yes, that's a perfect comment. And that was my second question, because I think it's a huge ask, and it is so much to ask from a supervisor, again, as I said, when you're busy supporting the individual with their research, that complex research question. And my second question was, where do you feel you need more support or institutional alignment to help your students succeed? So it's sort of a success together, isn't it? When your student success aligns to yours. And it's so much to ask, and training might be one option, but what else? What else you would expect from your institutions? I mean, when I used to teach at Queen Mary University, we used to have teaching groups, and on those teaching research groups, supervisors used to support each other. So those were quite helpful, almost like similar to employee resource groups in universities or organizational settings. Yes, we have one question. Constance Landsman, do I pronounce correctly?
Yes, sorry, but I think
Michael, yes. Sorry, first Michael, I think.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, just following on from what you were saying there, I mean, I do find it, a serious challenge, particularly, with having to support multiple students, often coming from very different backgrounds and countries. And I find one of the things that really helps are opportunities precisely to come together with other supervisors, but also bringing graduate students together. And I think they just get a huge amount from that mutual support, but also from the kind of informal support from other supervisors in those, kind of doctoral PGR days and so on.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Michael. And I agree, like getting together is a very helpful way of kind of sharing experience, learning from each other. Training sets one standard for everyone, saying this is how we can approach to certain things, but real life experience is different. Sharing that experience kind of improves each other's experience as a supervisor, and also emotional support, as well as the students. Supervisors need the emotional support as well throughout this process. Sorry, the Teams isn't great in terms of seeing the names. Constance?
Yes, thank you. Just following up from this, I think the mentoring in the early days is really important. I think it's quite a peculiarity of the British supervision system that you can go straight into supervising as soon as you enter, as you have a permanent post. You don't have an habilitation or habilitation or something like this. So you do get quite junior members of staff, and it's quite helpful to have a well-meaning co-supervisor who can sort of support you at every stage. Because if you think also about the contrast, say, with undergraduate teaching, where there is so much support and monitoring, this is lacking a bit. And perhaps more provocatively, I think when things are not working really well, it is helpful to have very clear regulations and boundaries in place, actually, because there are so many structural inequalities, and academia is a challenging place. Sometimes the supervisory relationship can become a bit fractious, and you need institutional support in these situations.
Institutional support to feel safe as a supervisor, to feel safe as a student. It's a two-way thing, isn't it? Yes. Thank you so much for sharing all of these. Sorry, I'm just trying to see the name again. Maria, please.
Hello, everybody. This is Maria Castrinou from Brunel. I would like to bring 2 points to the discussion. One is that in terms of equality for PGRs, doctoral researchers, I think it really matters a lot funding available. I think that is the number one priority and equalizer, because without Techne finished, for example, this year. It's not running. Techne has been a wonderful way for PhD students to come to Brunel who wouldn't be able to afford a PhD otherwise. And Techne has limited funds for PhD students. And then relating to funding and institutional support, the second point is that, for example, we see now the dismantling of Brunel in amidst a situation of the whole higher education being demised, with huge effects on academics, but also on future academics. So, for example, in Brunel, funding for conferences, for networking, for training, for PGR students has stopped. Right, so they don't have any access. It has also stopped for academics. So without funds, you cannot go to the conferences. You cannot do the things that you would do otherwise, that would make you feel empowered and belong and acquire that kind of everyday practice of going and meeting other people and working through your own ideas vis-a-vis the ideas of others. And in relation to that, in Brunel, but I think that it's not only Brunel, part of the strategic undermining of PGR students is that our PGR admin office has been dismantled. We don't have PGRs, don't have, come this July, they don't have individual support. So what are the supervisors and the PGR of students themselves going to do with that, without that very essential administrative and beyond administrative support that usually colleagues, admin colleagues provide to both academics and PGR students, right? And what does it mean if a university decides not to have admin support for future colleagues, for PGRs? What does it mean in terms of the environment and research and the institutional support and weight they put on whether this is important? So I feel that without this kind of infrastructures, talk about EDI and support in a cultural level is unfortunately beyond the kind of challenges that we face.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think that, of course, specific to Brunel, which when I was there, that wasn't the case, if I remember correctly, Sanchia, but it's really quite disappointing to hear that.
It's a bit, haven't they?
Yeah, things have changed quite a lot. But just thinking, like, there are various challenges across the sector for universities. One way, it makes supervisors' life much harder to support students, because there are various things that come around when you're supporting a student. Whereas on the other side, it makes your role even more important as a supervisor for student success. And when I mentioned at the beginning that the student at the center isn't in isolation, they have this academic, institutional, personal, and societal factors. That societal factors refer to these legal requirements, funding for universities, and then funding for research areas, and also going to conferences and so on. It does refer to that, and there your role as a supervisor become more important, but also more challenging. In one way, with this particular work around, supervisor's role, and also with this workshop, we're trying to have some sort of insight and discussion. But of course, this is not going to offer a full solution to everything. But we're going to discuss a few things that we can do to make a difference in their success. So I want to move on to Sanchia. I want to hand over to Sanchia, where she will talk about further things that we need to consider, and then we can discuss about the solutions again, and how could we contribute further to this. Would you like to move on to next slide, please?
Yeah, thank you, Gulce. So if I ask Megan to move us to the next slide. Thank you. Yes. So just kind of thinking about the deficit model. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about it before we think about it, I guess, in practice. So the deficit model is a framework that attributes student challenges to personal shortcomings. So it can often affect students, particularly international students and those that identify as BME, who may be unfamiliar with certain UK academic and cultural norms. And we've talked about this as we've gone through. It can also lead to imposter syndromes where students who are capable feel like they don't belong. And, you know, on leadership courses, I often talk about a deficit model because, as I said, myself and Melissa deliver Diversifying Leadership, which is a course for BME, both academic and professional staff in higher education. And one of the things that I normally say is, you know, you're on this leadership program, but this leadership program is not going to fix you. You are able and you are capable, and what this leadership program is here to do is to give you strategies that you can use to develop your growth for leadership. And it's a similar concept for the students here. They are able and they are capable, but they may need a little bit of guidance along the way. And why does it matter to talk about this? Well, students can sometimes internalize negative stereotypes, which will have an impact on their confidence. And we've talked about confidence quite a lot, and that came up in the World Cloud. It can impact their confidence. It can impact their participation. The systemic bias that we find in our universities can also reinforce those feelings of them feeling inadequate. And despite the fact that, you know, the students do have to go through a selection process, they may feel that they need to catch up to their peers. And so in terms of your role as supervisors, some of the things that we have suggested in the toolkit is about how can you help shift the narrative? How can you help support your students move from a deficit mindset to a strengths-based approach? And how can you help them to identify what their strengths are? So it could be things such as their cultural capital, their cultural knowledge, their resilience, the fact that they speak more than one language. All of these things are of strength and of benefit to them and their studies, but also the university. And how can you encourage growth? So how can you use reflective practice to co-create academic goals? So some practical strategies that we have suggested are having regular check-ins, so fostering that open communication and an understanding with your students, clarifying norms, so providing that guidance on UK academic expectations and what the cultural differences might be, promoting belonging, and belonging is another word that has come up in our word cloud, encouraging them to be part of peer networks and informal group meetings, so both within their department but also outside, getting them to join, you know, like the Students' Union, any mentoring schemes that the university may have, so that they can network with a lot of different students, facilitating support, so kind of connecting them with their peer groups, with development opportunities, and building empathy, so creating a safe, inclusive environment where students feel valued for who they are. So we had a scenario here. So we have a student who feels they're always behind the home students. They're new to the UK, they're struggling with academic writing. So what Megan will do is she will in a moment put you in breakout groups to discuss how might the deficit model be operating here, what strengths might this student bring, even if it's not immediately visible. And as a supervisor, how could you shift their perspective? So really, we want to ensure that the students do know, they do have that skills and they do have that knowledge, but how do we help them to identify that and help them with their confidence? So what I will do is I can type this in the chat so that we have that there. 1 second. And so if you just take a moment to think about it while I do that, and then as I said, Megan will put you into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And then we would like to get some feedback once you have done their breakout rooms as to how you might approach that. So I've put that in the chat. I'm not sure why it's coming up so big in terms of text. Apologies for that. Alisa, yeah, okay, fine. You've got a clash. But yes, we will be sending out a PDF copy of the slides. And as Melissa said, obviously the toolkit as well. So do we have any?
I'll talk about both cultural awareness and active listening, but please feel free to jump in when you want to stop me and talk about a certain thing or give, I don't know, an example, an experience. It would be much more useful if you do so. So here I want to talk about a bit about how culture shapes the supervision space. We did touch on this and we mentioned this, but I want to go into a bit more detail because every student brings with them a unique worldview, sort of shaped by their upbringing, language, norms, values. So supervision on its own becomes a shared space and shared experience where these worlds meet and sometimes kind of collide. As a supervisor, being culturally aware doesn't mean we have to be experts in every culture. And I think Patricia mentioned in the beginning, like it's expected from us to know everything, which is true, but also shouldn't be the case. But it does mean noticing and adapting to differences in things like power dynamics, and sort of communication styles. These become more important, sort of paying attention to those and getting these clues. If I talk about these in one by one, in terms of power dynamics, in some cultures, questioning a supervisor may feel inappropriate. This is just one example. And this can lead to silence being mistaken or agreement or understanding. So kind of misunderstood. Another thing to pay attention could be the difference of communication styles, because some students may speak more indirectly and differentially, while others may seem more assertive. Neither is better, it's just they're different. Also, value systems may differ. Like, for example, a student may be coming from a collectivist background and might hesitate to prioritize their own research goals over family responsibilities or other things, which can impact their timeline for submitting their chapters and certain other deadlines. Also, adjustment pressures could be an issue. Like, think about the emotional toll of navigating academic language. And we talked about loneliness and unfamiliarity with the norms. I think these could be challenges for them, and for you to be, try to be familiarize yourself, try to be aware of these things could help actually the student and empower them. Before I discuss sharing the cultural insights and having this discussion, I can give a little example of how it's been a long time, but how I felt empowered during my PhD research. And I felt the same. I wasn't supervising PhD students, but master students how I think empowerment could happen in a space, which we gave examples like sharing that discussion, reading, writing together. The other thing could be seeing those students as your colleagues would also help. I used to be in a CRED Research Center for Research and Academic, Center for Research in Equality and Diversity in Queen Mary University, where we used to sit together with all our supervisors, like professors, senior lecturers, and so on, all of them in one room, and discuss the research areas where they saw us as their colleagues as well. From the first day, as we start our PhDs, where we discussed our research ideas from the first day, and we would present it as if we were their colleagues and we could do research together. It could be outside our PhD, it could be a seminar together, it could be a research collaboration. But as you see them as their colleague, as your colleagues, it sort of empowers them and helps them to navigate between all these challenges we mentioned, including the cultural differences, because then they will see within that space what those differences are in terms of communication, in terms of these different value systems, feedback mechanisms, and that power dynamics might soften, and it would help them to give feedback, take feedback from you as well. So if we bring this to life now, could you think about other examples? Like I gave my example, but it's been a long time. So could you give some examples from your own experience or shared experiences you see around you from other colleagues? And we could discuss like when cultural difference played a role in your supervision experience, positive or challenging. What sort of strategy you have used to help a student feel more at home, both socially and academically. And finally, how do you help your students bring their heritage into their academic voice? When I say about heritage, I don't mean family heritage, but heritage of their knowledge, of their understanding into their academic voice. Whether through their research topics, writing style, or broader contribution to that discipline that you're working together. Who would like to give an example or just comment or ask any questions? Anyone?
Hi.
Yes, Sarah. Yes.
Yes. The example I have is one where an Indian student wanted to have her thesis read and given feedback on by a psychotherapist in India, and we couldn't pay for it. We can't pay for it. It's still ongoing. And so it's, and she expressly wanted someone from India to look at it because the field work was in India and both her supervisors are European. So, and not from a South Asian heritage either. So it's an ongoing issue actually, and I don't quite know how to solve it. I know she's talking to this person, but to allow them to kind of be paid for their labor is we're in a bind with that.
So so this person is that person, you said in psychology but not in academia, right?
Yeah, it's a psychotherapist. Yes, a dance psychotherapist. Yeah.
I mean, it's challenging as you're sort of putting the other way around, where both supervisors are unfamiliar with the students' culture, and they're facing the same challenge and trying to find the middle way to actually get this. But the question is, if I didn't get it right, are you asking if in an area where you can't get the funding for that sort of second peer review, where you find a middle ground of this.
Yeah, I guess that is the question. I didn't actually ask a question. I was just kind of posing the situation, because these things kind of just land, and then, you know, it's how do you solve that, to allow the student to feel comfortable that their work is actually, you know, is addressing the context in a suitable way. I hope that we've made her confident in us as well. I think that's also something. But, you know, it is, I guess it's just something to bring up. Yeah.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful, and also kind of helps us to think the other way around of this issue. And it's again two-way relationship of building that trust in that academic work, and having that knowledge brought up together. Any ideas? Again, this is an interactive session, interactive workshop, anyone to discuss in relation to this example, but also you can share a different example. No ideas? Yes, Patricia?
I just, sorry, perhaps not what you want to hear or what you're asking, but in my case, it happened the other way around, listening to what Sarah was saying before. I come from Colombia, and the students I have supervised, all of them are European. And I think it was challenging at the beginning for them to accept I had an authority about the field, the discipline, their area of research, because I was coming from a part of the world which they didn't perhaps think unconsciously that was on a peer level with Europe. So that can also be the case sometimes. So I suppose how I dealt with that is with patience and through interaction, so that they gradually could trust me as a supervisor in terms of the knowledge. Yeah.
But of course, it takes time and so much energy as well. So
it takes time.
You know, it takes time and a lot of effort. I mean, of course, we share some of the strategies here, like how we can support and so on, but it could be the other way around. As I said, you experienced this as a supervisor. And some of the techniques in this sort of situation might help, but of course, it's a long route. And again, there's no single solution. Universities' stance here is also important, what sort of support mechanisms they provide within the university. And I guess academics can also challenge the universities to bring those resources together to support the academics, which might help. In some universities, they do provide this. At LSE, we have a PhD academy where we support PhD supervisors with some training materials on these cultural awareness and also, you know, unconscious bias training and so on. That's also helpful. But of course, it's a two-way issue. And thanks for sharing that. Anyone else before I move on to some of the things we can do to help approach a student? Thank you. So I'll move on to, yes, John.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You can move on. Let's move on. Yeah, but thank you. Yeah.
Okay, sure. But please come back with your question after the next slide, so we can discuss if you have any example or a question. Sorry. So what I'm going to discuss about is active listening in these situations. And as you've kindly shared your experiences, individual experiences, I think this active listening, I can shift this conversation a little bit, could work both ways. And it's so important, is it would help both the supervisor and the supervisee. So, and it's very powerful, yet often overlooked, that tools in inclusive supervision in our supervision experience is overlooked, and active listening is one of the most powerful ones. We have covered few other things in the document that we wrote together with Sanchia as part of this work, but we wanted to focus this as a more powerful exercise. So we all know what it's like to be heard technically. So someone nods or maybe even responds, but we don't quite feel heard in most of the cases. So as this quote says, listening is not just hearing, it's making students feel heard, as you can take it as the supervisors, to be heard and understood what they mean. And for many postgraduate students, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, feeling heard can be the difference between surviving and thriving in academia. As a new area they start in the beginning of their career, it's already quite challenging anyway. So why does this matter so much for these students? Active listening builds trust, a crucial foundation for students who may already feel like outsiders. It encourages disclosure. Students are more likely to open up about challenges when they feel safe and not judged. And I want you to remember that example you also gave, like doing things together, but also feeling as a colleague they can give feedback, open up, and feeling not judged. It helps us counter assumptions and stereotypes we may unconsciously hold. We all have unconscious bias one way or another. So, and also more importantly, it supports students' well-being. It reassures them that their concerns are valid and that their presence matters. So that helps them to be present in that space. It's the same for supervisors. I think we need to start hearing each other. So let's reflect on this for a moment. And you've mentioned already some of the barriers that you face. So I want you to remind us some of these, and you might share your examples. What are the biggest barriers you face to active listening in your supervision practice? It could be the other way, that they don't hear you. Is it time? Is it like other distractions or assumptions? And Patricia mentioned about some of the assumptions. That's a cultural assumption. And how might you integrate more active listening into your everyday check-ins, even in short meetings? Can you think of a moment where truly listening made a difference for a student or for your supervision practice? I mean, you can take a few minutes to think about your example if you want to share. You can think about as, I don't know, active listening as silence, eye contact, or reflective questions, the tone of supervision, all of these matter. So again, I'd like to remind, what are the biggest barriers to active listening in your supervision practice, and how could you integrate one or more of these techniques into your regular check-ins? And can you kind of think of a moment where you truly made a difference in your supervision practice? We can think of a little bit.
I think we were going to do this one in the breakout room, were we?
Sorry, I didn't have that. Sorry if I forgot that, Sanchia.
That's okay. Yeah, so let's maybe do this one as a breakout room. What we can do, we can
that would give us a little more time to think, actually.
Yeah. So what we can do is, let's put in the chat some pointers. 1 second. So What are the biggest barriers to active listening in your supervision practice, and how could you integrate one or more techniques into regular check-ins? So those are some things to think about. And obviously this is not an exhaustive list, so if you've got some suggestions based on your previous experience of what you think could be helpful, we would love to hear those as well. So we'll ask Megan to pop you into breakout rooms. We'll stop the recording as well while you're in those rooms and